Hello and welcome to episode 9 of What Makes This Song Special. As always, I will be taking a song that reminds me of a certain time in my life. I will talk a little bit about the story from that time, where I was in my life at that time. I will then talk a little bit about the artist, the band, and the singer. Bit of a vocal coach takedown on the singer's voice, and then a separate video to follow up in part 2, where I will do a cover version of the song. So this week's story starts in the summer of 1999. So I just left school, just left high school. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, my mum and dad often let me and my brothers have a friend or two along on the road trips to Italy in the summer when we went back home to Italy. And we'd all be squeezed into the family wagon and take friends through Europe, stopping to see some incredible places, eat some incredible food. It was magical, and I loved and still do love taking people over to our hometown of Villa Latina and sort of showing off a little bit and showing people how amazing the place is. I feel very proud of it. So it was one of those sort of, it was a slightly bittersweet summer. We'd just thrown off the shackles of high school, so it was the end of school. It was the end of a massive chapter in our lives, the biggest chapter certainly that I'd had so far in my days on this earth. And we'd thrown off those sort of shackles, and we're about to open a new chapter in our lives. And the sort of uncertainty in that limbo period was very sort of ominous. For Ian, one of my best pals who had come with us on the trip, Ian and I had been friends since primary school, and he came along with us on the trip to see Italy for the first time. He was heading to university after the summer holiday, which obviously goes with a lot of excitement, but a lot of unknown as well. So I'm sure he was feeling a wee bit nervous about that. For me, I was finally free of school, but I was the only one of my friends who had decided to take a year out to become a rock star. That was the dream, or maybe. The truth was I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life really, and lots of friends and family and stuff. They were very supportive, and they were all thinking that I should make it in the music industry, but I didn't even know if I really wanted to at that point. I think there was a lot of fear at the sort of thoughts of what that might entail, but it's for another episode. But I was completely lost that summer, and I decided to sort of put that feeling on the back burner and just enjoy the summer holiday, because I was able to. We had about 5 weeks, I think, to play football, eat pizza, meet new friends, swim, sunbathe, write songs, talk nonsense, laugh. It was a great holiday, and yeah, those 5 weeks were we were able to just sort of put all those thoughts to the back of our heads and just enjoy childhood a little bit longer. So so Ian and I, we'd been friends, as I said, since primary one. So that would have been in UK terms, primary one starts when you're about 4 years old. So we'd been friends since we were 4 years old, and this was us maybe about 17, 18, and having a holiday in Italy together. Um, we had very different tastes in music. He loved a lot of indie pop rock bands like Stone Roses, Blur, Teenage Fan Club. I didn't like that stuff at all, and was more into, as I've said before in previous episodes, sort of classic rock, 70s artists, etc. So for two friends who had so much common ground, we didn't really see eye to eye in our musical tastes. But we were respectful and didn't slag each other off too much with those sort of different tastes. So I remember that summer, Ian had brought a copy of an album called Performance and Cocktails with him. So Performance and Cocktails was the newest album of a band called the Stereophonics at the time. I think it was their second album, certainly their second sort of successful album. I don't think they were even one of his favourite bands. I think he just had been given the album or got the album before we came away on holiday, and it became a sort of holiday album for him. Um, I wasn't enjoying the album, and I'm going to stop and say this in hindsight. I actually think there were some great great tracks on that album. I think the Stereophonics have actually got some brilliant songs. But at the time, I was, 17 years old, and I thought I knew everything about the world, and I was opinionated, especially musically, bit of a vocal snob, and everything I loved, all the songs that I liked and all the bands I liked had sort of big, powerful tenor voices. And if I heard songs that weren't difficult to play or sing, or thought, oh yeah, I could play that, it's easy, it's got three chords, then I kind of unfairly um, sort of deemed those bands or artists sort of not good enough, and sort of thought they must have been really lucky to have made success and all these things. So a bit unfair, and a bit naive, but that's where I was at in my life in my teens. So, yeah, there's a lot of bands that I hated back then that I actually really like now. Bands like Oasis and things, even that I really didn't like when they first came out, probably because everybody loved them. And yeah, I don't like things that everybody else likes. I like to be different. And yeah, and nowadays, now I think about the amount of songs that of Oasis that I cover on a regular basis at weddings and things like that, functions that I play. And they're great songs. They've lasted the test of time. So anyway, Oasis isn't for this episode. The Stereophonics. So yeah, after every night, what we did was we would go out to the local bar. It's a very small village, Villa Latina, so there were maybe two bars. There's like a bar and a pub, or there's an ice cream parlour. So there's a couple of places you can go at night as a youngster, and you can hang out, and there's no restriction on. It's not like it is, and I don't know what it's like in other countries in the world, but certainly in European countries, kids can go into bars, um, before they're 18, as long as they're with parents and things like that, you can go into a bar. A bar isn't necessarily like it is in Britain. A bar is very much a kind of adult place to drink alcohol, whereas bars in Italy, certainly in Spain and things like that, I think it's more like like a family place to go that also subsequently sells alcohol. So yeah, we could all hang out there. Even my younger brothers, they would come along as well to the bar, and we would play pool, and we would chat to folk and have a laugh and stuff. So we would do that most nights after sunbathing and playing football and things like that during the day, and we would return to the house, and after sort of subjecting Ian to 80s rock all day, he would then return the favour by making me listen to bits of this new album that he'd fallen in love with. When we went to bed, there was no air conditioning. There was no air conditioning in my grandparents' old house, and we would lie on top of the bed. It was too warm to go under the covers, so we just lie on top of the bed in like our football strips, and try and sleep when it was roasting 38 degrees. And I don't know what that would be in Fahrenheit for you Fahrenheit listeners, but 38 degrees C, it's hot. It's very hot. So yeah, we would take a headphone each. So we had like an earphone each. So I would put one in my ear. Ian would put one in his, and he would play some songs from this album, Performance and Cocktails. And for some reason, maybe a week or so into the holiday, it almost became this ritual that we listened to. There was a song near the end of the album called A Minute Longer. I almost forgot the name of the song. That's the whole point in the show. So we'd listen to A Minute Longer every night as we fell asleep. And again, it wasn't a song that blew my mind on first listen. It wasn't even, I'll be honest, it wasn't even a song that I really liked the first few times I heard it. And not one of Stereophonics' best or most successful songs either, but it became like our holiday song. People always have like a holiday song or something that reminds them of a holiday. I remember lying there with my best mate in my favourite place in the world and just wishing that we could stay a minute longer. It became, the lyrics and the title of that song became very poignant, because it was that desperation to hang on to our youth as the end of the holiday neared. And so, yeah, the thoughts of the realities of the world that awaited us became more and more sort of terrifying. The lyrics in the song started to take on that whole new meaning. And I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with my life when I got back. There was a sort of abyss in my mind when I tried to work out, what the future held and what I was going to be doing. when we returned to Scotland after that holiday. So, and my friends had all these, like all of my school friends, they had these sort of tangible plans, and mine were sort of crazy dreams, if you like. That's what everybody said, crazy dreams, that I wasn't even sure if I really wanted to come true. And at the time, I don't think I even realised how apt the lyrics were for that sort of big chapter change in my life. I don't think, and this would maybe be slightly unfair of me, but I don't think there are that many of the Stereophonics lyrics that are like true stories, or like from what I've heard anyway. There's certainly a lot of their songs have quite throwaway. There are some. Local Boy in the Photograph, of course, is a really great lyric, great song as well. If you want to check that song out at some point, it's a fantastic song. And it's about like a boy who either went missing or committed suicide or something in their local town. And yeah, there's a whole story there. There's a wee narrative. I think a lot of the songs, from what I can gather, are just sort of throwaway lyrics. But certainly this lyric in this song's about um, wanting to pause time, this nostalgia, and certainly that's a big thing for me. I've always been a very nostalgic person. Thus, this series where I talk about different parts of my life and songs that remind me of them. Um, so yeah, I don't think we were ready to become adults at that point. I don't think I'm ready to become an adult yet, many years on. But we just wanted to hang on to the madness without thinking about jobs and university degrees and all the serious stuff. And this song always takes me back to those nights with one earphone, listening and falling asleep, dreaming about what the next awesome day on that holiday had in store for us, as we sort of tried to put a wee delay on the thoughts of adulthood and what the future post school had in store for us. So that's my wee story. I'm sure most people can relate to that. Leaving school, I think, for everybody is a massive. It's one of the biggest chapters of everybody's life, I think, in the world. It's a huge stepping stone from childhood to adulthood. So, the Stereophonics. I'll talk a bit about the Stereophonics. They're a three-piece band from Wales, another Welsh band. We had a Welsh band a few weeks ago with the Manic Street Preachers. They formed in 1992, but they didn't really find real fame and success until 1997 with the album Word Gets Around. I think that might have been their debut album. I should have done more homework on this, but I'm pretty sure that was their debut album. It was certainly their first, successful album. And Performance and Cocktails was the album that followed that up. And they were one of the biggest bands in the UK in the late 90s and early 2000s. And they sort of bridged the gap between rock songs and sort of chart pop hits, which was getting more and more difficult to do, I think, then, and certainly almost impossible now, sadly, as there aren't really very many rock bands that you hear on pop radio anymore, which is a great shame. So the lead singer and guitarist Kelly Jones has a really cool voice. Now, Kelly Jones has got a really unusual and very cool voice. And again, I wasn't a fan of those sort of gravelly voices when I was younger, but I've come to appreciate the character in singers like Kelly. There are a lot of students that'll ask me if I can teach them to sing like Kelly Jones or Rod Stewart, or with that kind of husky, gravelly sound in their tone. And I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but it is honestly almost impossible to train that sound. I know there are lots of vocal coaches online that are promising people that I'll teach you how to sing with the gravelly sound. There are safe ways of adding distortion to notes. Certainly, you can add distortion to certain notes. It has to be done really carefully, sort of as an overlay effect on top of a very, very well, very well honed and technical voice. You can get away with it. You can certainly add vocal fry, which is that kind of I don't know, you can see. You can add on a vocal fry. Go into the science of that at some point, the biology of that. But vocal fry is a sound that you can safely add into onsets of notes, and that can sound really cool. And you can certainly add some gravel to bits and pieces of words and phrases. You can add distortion, as I said, to maybe a big extended high note or something like that, which is which is always a cool effect. But to have it as a permanent fixture on your voice doesn't usually allow safe singing. It doesn't usually allow longevity. Certainly that's a surefire way to kind of kill your chords, or certainly fatigue them, or add inflammation to them long term. So you don't want to try and sound like these guys unnaturally. Guys like Rod Stewart, Kelly Jones, James Morrison, etc. They've got a slightly slightly different genetic makeup that allows them to sing like that without pain or fatigue. When most of us do it, we've got a cold and it's just inflammation in the chords, and we think, oh, it sounds kind of cool to sing down here. That doesn't really transfer over to singing once the cold's away and the inflammation's died down. These guys have a way of letting the air escape through the chords, and usually have some like natural nodes, which are like wee sort of bumps on the chords that most people don't have. So that's what allows that sound to happen. For most of us, that's not something that we can just add into the sound safely and sing with, and that's why singers like that are so coveted. And yeah, it's a really cool sound. Certainly, as I said, not a sound that I really particularly liked or loved when I was younger, because I was all about the big, powerful rock voice, which sometimes can have a wee bit of distortion on it, but it's not gravelly right through the whole range. But that's my wee vocal coach reacts, I suppose, to Kelly Jones. But great singer, still has a great voice today. And as I said, it's hard to recreate something like that, even with vocal lessons and all the best will in the world. But there are ways of adding bits and pieces of that gravel into your voice safely if you go down the right path. So yeah, so that's my wee story today. That's my vocal coach reacts to, and a wee bit about the Stereophonics. And yeah, click part 2, which will be coming up on the screen any second. Click part 2 to see me have a wee go at A Minute Longer by the Stereophonics. Thanks so much. Cheers.